There are 343 federal electoral districts in Canada from coast to coast to coast, meaning there are hundreds of candidates out there that haven't really had a critical look in the media. A lot of these people have skeletons in their closet that they are trying to hide, and we want to uncover just a few of them. I don't want this to be purely gossip. The bar I'm sort of going by is, if I was thinking of voting for this candidate, would this new information change my mind? And along with me on this ride is the host of our politics edition. Noor, are you ready?
I was born ready.
That's what I love to hear. I know some of our listeners will be familiar with the antics of Member of Parliament Cheryl Gallant. She's actually one of the longest serving Conservative MPs and the last of two MPs that were in the Canadian Alliance. Cheryl Gallant is Teflon. No matter what she says, she cannot lose. She's had 25 years of controversies. She's the MP for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke in Ottawa and won her first seat in the 2000 election. So
The year I was born.
the year you were born, she's been an MP as long as you were alive.
Nice.
In 2002, in a heated exchange with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Bill Graham, she shouted, "Why don't you go ask your boyfriend? And how's your boyfriend?" And obviously, this was seen as very homophobic. Cheryl eventually apologized, saying that last Wednesday in this house, I made a remark that upon reflection was inappropriate and I regret making. If anyone was offended by the remark, I offer my sincere apologies. Only if you were offended by the remark, though.
If you weren't, no worries. We'll let that one slide.
Now, this was back in 2002. As much as it sucks to say, this behavior was a lot more common back then. These kind of jokes were flown around pretty casually. But Noor, it gets so much worse.
Oh, worse than homophobic jokes.
Worse than homophobia.
Nice. Let's go.
So I'm just going to fire them off. In 2004, she compared abortion to the beheading of American journalist Nick Berg only a week after it happened.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Gallant, Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke, and a big welcome to everybody from the Valley, the Knights of Columbus, Lutherans for Life, Catholic Women's League, and Bishop Smith High School. I'll be taking attendance later. Earlier this week, the entire civilized world was horrified when we saw that young American have his head literally cut off in front of the cameras. Well, what's happening down there is absolutely no different. 35 years, 2 million missing children. That's an entire generation. Keep up the fight.
No.
And she, again, apologized for that. And that's going to be a common theme in this whole Cheryl Gallant saga.
Only if you're offended, right?
Only if you're offended.
Only if you take offense, right?
Continuing on, 2 years later, in 2006, she was accused of obtaining birth date information from passport applications during her campaign. And then she would send birthday cards to people on their birthdays.
What?
Yeah, it's kind of sweet.
Kind of weird.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah.
And I don't really care for a birthday card from my MP.
Also, why do you have my birthday?
Yeah.
Don't.
The Office of the Ethics Commissioner looked into it. They commented personal information should only be used for the purpose for which it is gathered. They found Gallant's use of the information did not further her private interests as originally alleged. So she got off pretty unscathed by this.
Just a card, though? No cake, no cupcake, no flowers?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I would
I
expect
think-
a bit more.
Yeah, if you want my vote, you got to earn it.
Yeah, I gotta be bribed with cake for it.
It gets worse and worse. In 2016, after the death of Nathan Cirillo at the National War Memorial, a tragic event for all Canadians, she sent an email out to her email list with the subject in all caps, "Terrorists in our midst." The email has all sorts of photos of Cirillo's killer on Parliament Hill and the attacker, and even some other photos of terrorists that were active at the time around Canada. And at the bottom of the email, on a red Order Now button, it leads to an Easter fundraising campaign where donors are told that if they donate, they will be rewarded with a ham.
At the bottom of the terrorism email?
The Easter ham.
What?
why are you using this national tragedy to ask for campaign donations and
In
also
exchange
in
for
exchange for
ham?
ham? Yeah.
Ham is no, not a good bribe. Cake.
Once again,
good
cake would have
bribe.
been great, but
Yeah.
no, a ham. But Noor, the pandemic is where she really went off the rails. I mean, we all did a little bit. Did you go off the rails a little bit?
We don't have to talk about it.
She had her own little YouTube channel where she posted weird videos where it's kind of like a fake news show where she's the anchor delivering some timely news stories, and they have her photos circulating in the back above her shoulder like they do on the nightly news. So anyways, here are some of the stories that she reported.
How long do you think it'll take before the Trudeau Liberals start calling for a climate lockdown?
Oh, God.
Yeah, a climate lockdown.
God.
Here's another.
Trudeau is using the pandemic to rob Canadians blind.
And she does the classic thing where she was trying to link Trudeau to popular conspiracy theories about the global elite and the World Economic Forum.
You recall these statements from Justin Trudeau. Great Reset.
And Noor, it's not just the clips that are so bad, but the photos she has in the background behind her head. One of them has a picture of Trudeau with his tongue out, and there's a rope around his neck.
No.
Yeah.
Jeez. That, not pleasant.
And kind of the funniest one that I never really had heard before, because I do kind of keep up on a lot of these conspiracy theories, and I like to understand where they're coming from. But this one was a bit weird.
Does the paramedic know to check to see if electrocution is a risk before helping a victim?
What does that even mean?
She's talking about electric vehicles and the dangers of electric vehicles, and it's this agenda being pushed upon people. And she's just saying that electric vehicles are more dangerous because if you get in a crash, you might get electrocuted.
You know, if you get in a crash in a gas vehicle, the car might blow up. So I don't know. I don't know where we're going with this one.
She eventually scrubbed everything. So these are all from archival websites.
Thank God for archives.
And it's just like, are you just saying whatever comes to your head on camera? Like,
There's a whole job market out there, Sam, of people exactly like that.
further on in 2021, she spoke virtually to a group of young conservatives at Queen's University in Kingston. And she said this when she was talking about the Liberal Party.
People who were never, ever going to be happy with the legalization of marijuana. They want all illicit drugs to be legal. They want anything goes in every aspect of life. They want to normalize sexual activity with children.
Where is the evidence for this?
And I don't know where she got that from.
Bizarre.
Like-
Also, I'm sorry, legalizing weed was one of the best things Justin Trudeau did.
Yeah, truly, that's his legacy.
It really is.
This whole thing just shocks me because we've seen so many candidates removed in the last few days. Mark McKenzie was just removed by the Conservatives for joking about hanging Trudeau on a podcast, which is not that different than having a photo in the back of a rope around Trudeau's neck.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens in this election. Nor for this next candidate, we're going to Hamilton East Stony Creek. The Conservatives haven't traditionally been a contender in this riding, but in 2021, it was a pretty tight three-way race with the Conservatives coming in second. So it is a ball game there. And the Conservative candidate this time around is Ned Couric. On his bio, he says he's a, quote, local entrepreneur and a former global sports entertainment executive who is ready to axe the carbon tax, build homes, restore freedom, and bring affordability back to Hamilton East Stony Creek. He's a mortgage agent, and he's the former owner of a Muay Thai gym. He's constantly spouting Pierre Poilievre's talking points, as you could tell by his bio.
Homes are unattainable for the youth. The youth have lost hope in Canada. No matter how hard they work and go to school and get the jobs they desire, they still will not be able to afford a home.
Yeah, so home affordability is kind of a big platform point of his. Hamilton has been hit pretty hard with rising home prices and the housing crisis. But I did some digging and I found a podcast that he was on that a company called Miraka Group put out, which is a real estate company that serves Hamilton, Niagara, and a few other Ontario towns. In it, he's basically encouraging people to engage in housing speculation by buying and selling multiple homes at a time.
The fastest way to become a millionaire is through real estate. We know that.
Yeah.
You know that.
Made
I know
more
that.
millionaires than any other industry.
That's where I made all my money. I didn't make it by slinging pizzas. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
It was a cool paycheck. You can go to multiple builders in Stony Creek, anywhere really.
Yeah.
You know where they are. We know where they are. Someone can just call you and you'll find it for them.
Yeah.
You're going to go in. You're going to buy something, a one bedroom for $300,000. You're going to hypothetically put in your $60,000. They're going to take 2.5 years to construct. Out of all the projects I've been in, I've never made less than $100,000 over 2.5, 3 years.
It's amazing.
Where are you going to find a 38% return on your money?
Can't.
Find me. You cannot.
No, and
I've searched.
And with little to zero work.
Complete passive.
Yeah.
That's complete passive.
Okay, youths, listen up. This is how you're going to make $1 million in this economy. You're going to buy a house. You're going to flip a house.
Buy.
What?
I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure he actually does care about affordability for the youth. He has 3 kids. I'm sure it's on his mind. But the thing is, this type of housing speculation, it's directly tied to increased home prices.
Totally.
I don't know how much you pay attention, you or listeners, to the Toronto area condo market. It's kind of crashed recently. According to a recent CIBC economic studies, they said sales have, quote, dived off a cliff to their lowest level since the late 90s. Here's the president of a real estate firm in Toronto, John Pesalis, talking about it.
Those units, we have a ton of inventory. Not a lot of people buying them because many of those fall into this sort of category where they're a little bit too small for people to live in, to want to own or occupy them, and investors aren't buying them. And I think this is one of the problems with Canada's housing crisis. This is how Canada filled our rental supply. Rather than building permanent rental housing, we built a lot of tiny condos bought by investors, which has effectively shut out families out of the downtown core.
Yeah, not looking too good.
Yeah, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel sad that I can't afford a home.
You can't go spouting affordability when you're directly profiting off of Canada's housing crisis.
That's exactly it.
It's exactly it. And I get that he's playing by the rules, and you could say that he's just profiting off a system that already exists, but then just don't run for office. Don't advertise this huge part of yourself. I don't know, if I was a voter in Hamilton, I'd want to know exactly who I'm voting for, and this is who Ned Curick is. And
if you're in Hamilton and can't afford a home, ask Ned how to help you flip houses.
Yeah, it's a cool $100,000 of completely passive income.
Totally passive, totally affordable.
Yeah. My passive income is
it's like the change that I find on the ground
on
the way to the subway. That's my passive income.
It's my grandpa's $50 birthday check that I get every year. Noor, I've got a Liberal candidate for you now. This one is actually an MP Jaime Batiste, who represents Sydney, Victoria, out on the East Coast. But he's actually moving to run in a different riding, the riding of Cape Breton, Canso, Antigonish, which is a pretty safe Liberal seat, so he's got a great chance here. And I don't know if you remember, but he was very briefly in the leadership race for the Liberals, and he was actually the first Indigenous person to run for the leadership of the Liberal Party. So yeah, kind of cool. Batiste, he's a resident of the Eskasoni First Nation, and he's currently the Treaty Education Lead for Nova Scotia, and he's described in his Liberal profile as a published writer on Mi'kmaq laws, history, and knowledge. He was born in Sydney, so he's East Coast through and through. On February 2nd, 2012, he posted, quote, "Why do I assume every skinny Aboriginal girl is on crystal meth or pills?"
No, Jaime, no.
Yeah. Now, he did apologize for these comments, I should say. He said, "At times in my life, I have made crude jokes that I thought were funny at the time, but I realize now that these words were offensive. These were things that I said during difficult times in my life, and they're not a reflection of my beliefs or who I am today. I apologize unreservedly."
To those who are offended.
Any of you listeners out there, if you have dirt on a candidate, if you have old social media posts, if you had personal interactions with them. I've gotten so many emails from you guys already that I've been struggling to pick ones to put in the episodes, but we'd love to hear them. Please feel free to reach out to me at sam@canadaland.com. I read everything you send, and I do take every tip seriously, so please send them along.